I think all these markets are going to fall at the same time. Dollars are becoming less and less and less valuable for banks, and they would rather hold and gold futures contracts. Ultimately, London, New York, and China, they're all in the same pocket. We're on the precipice of that. I mean, look at the yen. Look how fast it's weakening. Once the yen goes, the dollar goes with it. Everything goes. It's going to happen. Once it does, I don't think there's any way for central banks to rebuild this fiat system because the debt is just so freaking high. The public only wakes up at the end. I am sort of on ground zero here. I live in northern Israel. A Hezbollah bomb on the night that Iran attacked Israel came about 100 meters away from my house, and I do think is going to erupt at some point. All the countries around us, all the governments around us really do want all of us dead. I want money for when this goes down. Once this starts to spread out, hopefully you have a much more cooperative planet that doesn't erupt in war. Funding of Ukraine. How are they getting all this money? Where is all this war funding coming from? It's coming from the dollar. The faster that thing hyperinflates to nothing, the faster the wars have to end.
So what's your take on gold? I mean, right now, what are we at? 30, 23, 28. First off, we got to, I guess, talk about why gold shot up in the first place. But then maybe we can talk about why there was that pullback and what your projections are for the future.
In terms of price projections, I try not to give dollar targets because, first of all, I don't think it's relevant in my way of seeing things. I don't even look at the dollar price. I do. I look at the dollar price. I'm not saying I don't look at it. I look at it. But what I do is I take a portion of my income every month or two, and I buy a certain amount of gold and silver, a certain percentage, because it's money, right? If the spot price is going to go down, the premiums are going to go up. So I'm not really going to save that much money by waiting for it to hit, let's say 2100s, and then I buy then, and then I'm not looking to buy and sell and make dollars.
Yeah.
So I want money for when this goes down. So I treat it like money, not money that I'm spending yet, but money that I will spend. I don't intend to take my gold and silver stacks and say, oh, give me a bunch of shekels or give me a bunch of dollars. I don't expect to do that. I expect to, say, okay, I want to buy this business. I want to buy this supermarket chain or whatever. I'm just putting up, words. I want to buy this car. Here, take coins. That's what I intend to do. So why is gold going up now, or why is the dollar going down now? I can't give you the reason because I don't know the reason. What I do know is that when the dollar does weaken, gold goes up in dollar terms, and we're having a banking war, right? The retailer, the stackers are not really in this yet. They're not buying gold and silver in big quantities yet. What this is banks bidding up futures prices and buying more futures contracts. Open interest in the COMEX has gone up from, what was it, a low of 400,000 contracts to now it's floating around 530,000. So that's an extra 130,000 ounce contracts. 130,000 times it's 100 ounces of contract, so it's like 13 million. Did I get a zero right there? It's a lot of notional gold, right? And it's the banks that are doing this. The banks trade in gold. They don't bother with silver. So something is going on in funding markets or something deep in the plumbing where dollars are becoming less and less and less valuable for banks, and they would rather hold instead gold futures contracts for liquidity reasons. So what exactly is causing that? I can't tell you, other than that I know this is inevitable. And then once the banks establish gold at like a plateau somewhere, I don't know, 25, 26, 2700, wherever it's going to be, then the public's going to wake up, and it's. If you can go back to the 1970s to see what was happening, right? There was a rally from 1971 to 1975 in gold, and silver didn't really do much. And then it calmed down for a year or two, and then from 1977 to 1979 to 1980, it just went from, what was it, like $150 to $872, and silver didn't really do much until the very, very end of that rally. So towards the end of these banker wars where they're bidding gold, where they're bidding gold up, the public only wakes up at the end, right? The public only woke up because silver is the public's money. Gold is banker money. It's capitalist money. When the public wakes up, they wake up all together. They go into silver, and it doesn't take them long to bid it up to the old historic monetary ratio of 15 to 1. That, I think, in terms of a monetary sense, rather than let's say a gold number that I'm looking for in terms of an end game number where, okay, that's it. I'm looking for ratios. I'm looking at the size of the Fed's balance sheet, how much assets they have, and most of it is debt. And how much gold would it take to back all of those assets? 100%. And the answer now is something like $50,000 an ounce. If gold were $50,000 an ounce, all of the Fed's liabilities would be backed by the gold that they supposedly own, assuming they own it. And then when that happens, you have the public waking up and they can't afford gold, but they say, "Oh, well, we'll get silver." So they bid it up until we hit a historic monetary ratio of 15 to 1, which is generally where gold and silver has been when silver coins are money directly from, let's say 1700 to 1873. That's generally where it was, 15, 16, something like that. So it's happened 3 times before. It happened in 1919 after World War I, 15 to 1 ratio, gold to silver. It happened in 1968, fall of the London gold pool, the last time banks were duking it out over the gold price. And it happened in 1980, 3 times in the 20th century. It's going to happen again. Once it does, I don't think there's any way for central banks to rebuild this fiat system this time because the debt is just so freaking high. So a 15 to 1 gold to silver ratio, a 100% backing of all the Federal Reserve's liabilities with the gold in the balance sheet, that's the end game. Exactly what dollar amount that is, I think it's going to be something like 60, 70,000 if they keep expanding the balance sheet the way they are now. It could be higher, it could be lower, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is that the debt on their balance sheet is now dead, and they can't play the debt game anymore.
China is buying gold. African countries are allegedly repatriating a lot of their gold. What do you make of the Shanghai metal market, and how do you think that is influencing the price of gold as it is? Maybe before we go there, if you could please, for our audience who is not well versed in this gold market stuff, can you explain the difference between like the paper gold and the real gold?
Paper gold is real gold in a certain sense because theoretically it's all deliverable. It's not all literally deliverable because there's a lot more paper. Paper gold is just a claim on gold. Just like, let's say the deed to your house is not your house. You can take the deed to your house and, present it and, evict a squatter or show it to
Not nowadays.
What?
Not
You can't
nowadays.
do that anymore. What you could borrow against your house using the deed to your house, right? So your paper house is your deed to your house. Your paper gold is your contract for gold. Obviously, there's a lot more contracts for gold than there is gold circulating. But that's really the same thing as saying there's a lot more dollars circulating than dollars are available at the Fed's official price of $42 an ounce. According to the Fed, gold is still $42. They never really changed it.
Jeez, I'd be loading up, be backing the truck up if that was the case.
So paper gold, it's really a way for speculators to speculate on the gold price. But that itself, people talk about manipulation in the paper gold markets. I do believe that there is manipulation in the sense of spoofing and these little stupid games that the banks play. But the real manipulation that really pushes the gold price down is the ability to create these contracts, because it creates the idea that there is gold out there that doesn't really exist. So in an ideal system, in a real honest money system, what you have is other commodities trading in terms of gold, not gold trading in terms of dollars. Right? That goes away, and we've seen that almost happen in March 2022, March 7th, 2022. It happened in the nickel market. Right? There was a huge squeeze on nickel for some stupid reason. Some Chinese guy who owned a nickel mine piled on these nickel shorts to lock in his prices on his nickel production, but it was too much. He didn't have the margin to back it up, and then pretty much like all of the entire global commodity complex almost like imploded on itself. That's what's going to happen. It's going to happen we're seeing something similar in cocoa, right? When we see it in gold and silver, that's going to be the end of all futures markets in terms of dollars, and you're going to return to futures markets in terms of gold and silver. It's going to happen all at once. It's hard to wrap your head around. But you asked about China. I take a different track on this. I don't think the whole Chinese the story of gold pricing moving to China is really that important because the Chinese paper gold market is just as artificial as the COMEX paper gold market or the London paper gold market. They're all inflated over their actual gold supplies. They all basically do the same thing, whether it happens in China or London or New York. They're all pretty much doing the same lying about their gold supply. So it could be that New York is losing a little bit of its luster, and a lot of trading is moving to China. That could just be that there's more Chinese people trading because they have more money now. I don't think it's really that significant. I think all these markets are going to fall at the same time. Ultimately, London, New York, and China, they're all in the same pocket, right? They're all interested in keeping the fiat system going, each for their own reasons, and they're all going to fail. So all of these futures markets are going to fail together. What's the last one standing? I don't know. It could be China, it could be London, could be New York. Whichever one of these idiots wins, I don't really care because I want the physical stuff and let them trade the paper.
So what about the selling of US treasuries and the seemingly moving towards the physical stuff? Like in China, I'm talking about.
Well, are they? I don't know if they are selling U.S. Treasuries.
They've been selling them
People
for a
can,
few years now, and I think it's been a steady decline and of their treasury holdings.
yeah. Well, they're really stuck. Because if they were to sell all of it, it wouldn't be worth anything. So they've got to sell like a little bit as little bit as possible. It
Right.
reminds me of the movie True Romance. I don't know if this is coming to my head now, but he finds like this like huge briefcase of cocaine, and he doesn't know what to do with it because he can't sell it all at once, and it creates too much of too much of a fracas with the police. So I think his roommate tells him, "No, you got to sell it a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. You're going to end up in prison." So the Chinese are pretty much in the same situation. They can't sell all their treasuries at once because then they won't be worth anything. Because then they'll have to take the dollars and buy something. So they got to do it slowly, but they can't do it fast enough because really the consumers are going to wake up before China has a chance to dump them all. So they're pretty much stuck. They're bag holders along with all treasury holders. Japan, China. Who's number three? Belgium, whoever it is. I don't know. But they're all stuck with it. So it's a sad story for them because they've been stacking treasuries for so long that they don't really know what to do with them anymore. And all of the stuff in America got all the stuff and they got all the paper. And now they're trying. They know what the end game is more or
Right.
less, and they're trying to have real stuff before all of their fake paper assets become revealed to be worthless, which is what they are.
Well, it seems like these three things are converging. You have the Taiwan crisis, which is going to ramp up now that they've received funding. You have the buying of gold by the Chinese, and then you also have the liquidation of their treasuries. It seems like everything is converging around some potential Thucydides trap war in the future. Like everything is going to perfectly map onto that when the dollar eventually loses its value at some point. Like you're saying, they're going to hold the bag like everybody else. But I guess the goal is to try to get as much gold as they can. I heard and this is, a rumor, but it was from a source which was, we'll say, semi-credible, that the Chinese actually have around 5,300 tons of gold as opposed to the claimed 2,300 tons, I believe. So, I mean, if that's true, really, if like, do you believe the U.S. has 8,200 tons of gold?
I don't know. What I try to emphasize to people is it doesn't really matter all that much. Like let's say all the villains have crazy amounts of gold and they're stacking for the end game and they're going to be rich. Fine. I don't care if evil people are rich. I'd rather they be poor. But if they're rich, they're rich. What am I going to do? The most important thing is that they don't have the ability to reach into my pocket anymore, right? Let them spend, let them have gold, let them spend it on, spend it down, trade it for goods and services that will make them comfortable so they can live out the rest of their evil lives on Epstein Island or wherever they want to go. I don't care. I just don't want them to be able to steal from me anymore by creating more gold derivatives and using what I work for, what I try to feed my family with. Just just take away their ability to steal. Let them be rich. Let them have whatever gold they want. And the act of spending money into the economy makes the public rich, because if you're creating goods and services and Klaus Schwab gives you a gold brick for whatever it is you're selling, you become richer. He becomes richer too, but at least he didn't steal from you, and that's the important part.
Yeah, and it's true that right now I read a statistic yesterday that the top 1% of US earners now have more wealth than the middle class. It used to be the case, and I'm just reading this statistic right here, that back in the early 1990s, the top 1% held about 16% of all of the wealth, and the middle class had around 37%. And now that number has converged. I'm not sure if you can see that there. So we've passed
Yeah.
I don't know, kind of death cross this is, but that's pretty crazy, right? Because that in itself, I mean, there's so many economic indicators flashing red right now. You got insider trading with all the big tech firms. They're all selling off. I mean, something big is coming, man. I can't emphasize it to people enough. And I don't want to give people financial advice, but everything in my being is telling me right now to either, and again, this is not financial advice, but to be in stuff and not holding dollars. I don't know. How do you feel about that non-advice?
I would say it's very wise. Uh, you're talking about the wealth gap. I think that's what you were showing me.
Hmm.
That whatever the top 1% owns such and such percent of wealth. Really, that can be very frustrating when you hear it that way. But when you try to decode what that sentence even means, like what does the top 1% own 99% of the wealth? Well, what is the wealth? What do they own? They have, like, let's say, a big bond portfolio, big stock portfolio. Maybe they have real estate, they have some real stuff. I'm not saying they don't have real assets. They do.
Hmm.
But a lot of what they supposedly own is just inflated assets that aren't worth what they say they are or what they think they are. Like,
Right.
say, let's say somebody has a bond portfolio worth, I don't know, $100 million in treasury bonds or whatever it is. If they need to stuff it somewhere. So what's that going to be worth in the end game? Pretty close to nothing. So it's a number. So what do they have dollars? No, they have bonds. And so we say that it's worth $100 million at today's market prices. And then we have this idea in our head, 100 million. Well, what could $100 million buy you? Well, it could buy you this many houses or that many boats or whatever. And then we put these pictures in our head of how much they actually have. How much do they actually have? Not that much. The gap between wealthy and middle class and poor, it's an illusion. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm saying it's exacerbated by the fakeness of the money in which everything is denominated.
I agree 100% because yeah, if you look at, the stock market clearly could potentially be in a melt up phase, and a lot of that money that Jeff Bezos has is not really real money. It's just an inflated stock price. I had another question that somebody wanted me to ask you, and it's about the Japanese yen. You talk about this often in your last few blogs. You've been talking about how the Japanese yen factors in here. Could you explain why this is a canary in the coal mine, and why a lot of the financial enthusiasts like yourself are talking about its, I guess, collapse?
Well, okay, so there's a lot of ways I can tackle this. Um, in terms of the philosophy that has led to this, right? when the world, led by the United States, moved into an inflationary system, what they did it through academia. The first thing they did was they conquered academic institutions and staffed them with Keynesians, and the whole idea that you can create units of account and thereby increase real wealth in the world is an insane idea. Like, it goes against the whole idea of economics is the study of scarcity and choice, and even human mortality. Right? It's a stupid, crazy idea, but that's how they started. And really, the country to take that to its most logical extreme has been Japan. They had the perfect culture for such a thing, the perfect historical circumstance, the samurai culture, kamikaze, go all the way with whatever they're doing. You see, like, the Japanese create these the perfect scissors or the perfect little gadgets, and they're just so exact. So they took the whole Keynesian nonsense and they really made it work as well as it possibly could. And have that aided by the fact that the United States nuked the country twice. So now basically that Japan has been the United States bitch for since 1945. Unfortunately for them. So Japan really symbolizes, really, it's the concretization of functional Keynesian money printing nonsense. It seems to work, right? Just like the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties seemed to work. That was also a very inflationary time when dollars were being printed like crazy. And then it stopped in 1929, which is what caused the crash. So the fact that it seems to work in Japan, people say, "Oh, where's the inflation in Japan? They have so much debt, they have so much this, they have so much that, and they're increasing their balance sheet like crazy more than any other Western country," which is all true. It's all going to come down, and when it does come down, the Keynesians are going to realize that their entire edifice is a lie, all of it. I think that when the yen is the most diluted currency, the most diluted first world major currency in the world, because every currency is basically the other side of the central bank balance sheet that prints it. And I think of like something like 95, 96% of the yen is Japanese government bonds. So that when their bonds fall, when their interest rates rise, Keynesians like to think that the way that you fight inflation is you raise interest rates. But when 96% of your currency is backed by bonds, by debt, and interest rates rise, that debt value falls. And when that debt value falls, the currency falls with it. So the fall of the yen is going to put the lie to the entire Keynesian system in the most spectacular way. In the very country that took the philosophy to its logical extremes. So once Japan falls, the entire system falls with it very shortly after. We're on the precipice of that. I mean, look at the yen. Look how fast it's weakening, and it's weakening with interest rates as they move higher. It's already proving Keynesianism wrong. If you look at the charts, that's what it's showing, and it's just going to speed up. So once the yen goes, the dollar goes with it. Everything goes. The yen is like the fulcrum of the entire Keynesian pyramid of the world.
Would you say, going back to your pyramid metaphor, that the yen would be right above the dollar then?
It could be. It might be right above it. It might be two rows above it. Maybe you have the euro on top of the dollar and the yen on top of that. If you really want to get into the academics of it, or and try to really figure out what the pyramid is, I see the border of it. I see this massive thing. If you're going to ask me exactly where things are structured, or like what the structural integrity of it, where the load bearers are, I don't know exactly. I just know the yen is a very big part of it. Not just in a structural load bearing kind of way, but in terms of the mystique of Keynesianism as a system that says that you can create units of account and everything will be fine, and you can increase production, real production, by increasing the units in which you account for that production, which is an insane idea.
And you're of
So
the
yeah,
Austrian school. Is that what you would identify with?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And maybe just you've explained the Keynesian part Could you explain that for our viewers who are perhaps not as well versed as some financial channels in economics theory? What is the Austrian School of Economics?
Well, the Austrian approach to economics is one of logic, right? As opposed to the economics that we have today, which is basically social engineering. They have a certain idea of what they want the economy to accomplish for their people, and then they put equations in, and then they say they want this number. So they say we need this sort of input, this sort of output, and if we put these equations in, then we'll get the result that we want. That's basically social engineering everybody's life. What the Austrian approach is a bottom up approach. It's a study of economics from a detached positivist perspective where you look at humans interacting and you say, well, how did this happen? How is it that a monetary system came into being? Not that we want to take a monetary system and use it to extract some kind of result from society where we want people to behave in a certain way. We're not going to be, in charge of, lab rats here. So, for example, one very quick example is, let's say if I say to you, minimum wage raising the minimum wage will create unemployment, and then a Keynesian will say, well, if you look at this empirical study here, blah 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 blah, we see that it's not true. Well, look, 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, that's just a logical statement. It's going to equal 4 wherever, because 2 + 2 does equal 4. So saying that raising the minimum wage is going to create unemployment, it's a mathematical statement, because when you push prices above their market clearing level, it's going to create a shortage or a surplus. A surplus on one side, a shortage on the other side. So if you raise the price of labor, it's going to create a labor surplus. What is the definition of labor surplus? Unemployment. Right? It doesn't matter what the empirical data might show, because you can never have like a science experiment where everything is controlled for in a human society. You can only do that in a lab where you can control every variable. Right? You can't do that in a human society without actually treating people like lab rats. So you create logical principles from the bottom up, and you say this is how logically human interaction works in every plane, in every sphere. And you cannot come to me with your empirical data, because we know how scientists can screw around with that and create any data they want for any sort of social purpose to create billions of dollars of whatever medical thing they want to do, right? You don't act like that. You don't behave as if humans are lab rats. You study economics from a logical perspective and you build it from the ground up. That's the Austrian approach.
Yeah, it would seem the way you're explaining it, then the Keynesian system is inevitably authoritarian,
Yes, absolutely.
because they're trying to micromanage all aspects of the system.
They don't start out that way, but that's where it leads to.
Right. And this is why, capitalism starts off great from the Keynesian point of view, but eventually turns into what we see now, where it's overregulated pretty much at every point. Now, I just have one a final series of questions for you that a friend of mine wanted me to ask you, and it was about the oil markets. So, do you see, and actually, I have two general questions for you. One's about the Middle East and how that's going to factor into the oil market. But do you see a point when there's going to be a new pricing mechanism for the oil market due to the dollar collapse? And what would the timeline be on that? And what will the impact be on interest rates and currencies when this shift maybe away from the petrodollar occurs? Have you thought a lot about oil and other commodities besides gold and how they factor into this equation?
Yeah. So on the petrodollar, the whole petrodollar system, that's also kind of a myth. Not that it doesn't exist, not that oil doesn't support the use of the dollar in certain ways. It does, and that gave the dollar a lot of life, especially in the 1970s when Nixon, when he simultaneously took us off the gold standard, quote unquote. He didn't really, but he took us off a statutory gold standard. He needed a way to strengthen the dollar in the face of that. So he went to Saudi Arabia and said, "Look, we'll give you military protection in return for only accepting dollars for in payment for your oil." So that was a mechanism through which to spread U.S. inflation all over the planet to
Right.
sort of give the dollar some strength that taking it off a statutory gold standard took away from it. So that's going to change when I think that the U.S. consumer is what's going to lead this. When consumer prices in the U.S. really start to tumble higher, to really skyrocket higher, then there's Saudi Arabia is not going to have much of an incentive to keep pricing its oil in terms of dollars. What they're going to have to do is price it in terms of gold. If you look at the price of oil in terms of dollars versus the price of oil in terms of gold, the price of oil in gold terms has been incredibly stable since oil became a commodity that people used
Hmm.
in like the 1870s, 1880s. It's been very, very stable, wobbling in terms of maybe like an ounce or two at most, even in the most extreme circumstances. So really, even now, oil being priced in dollars is basically an illusion. It's really priced in terms of gold now, right?
Yeah.
And it's just going to become explicitly priced in terms of gold when the dollar no longer functions. I think in the immediate aftermath, when the dollar does collapse, the first thing an economy needs is not oil. It needs it needs gold to be spread out because gold is really the way that you account for all commodities, including oil, copper, wheat, barley, whatever. It's all priced in terms of money in order to determine how much of whatever commodity has to go wherever it needs to go. And oil is just one part of that. So once you have a dollar collapse, you have all of commodities repriced in terms of gold, including oil itself, and through that mechanism, oil countries are going to get rich in real terms and not just in dollar terms. I mean, Saudi Arabia is going to have to start over because they've also been stacking dollars and they're going to lose all of that. In the immediate aftermath, they're going to have very, very expensive oil prices in terms of gold because not a lot of countries have a lot of gold. But once this starts to spread out, you'll have we'll have a system that works a lot more honestly, that not one country is dictating the terms of as the United States is now, and hopefully you have a much more cooperative planet that doesn't erupt in war. And I can't promise that it won't, but that's what I'm hoping. You'll either have like sections of warlords trying to control their oil supply, or you'll have a cooperative market that works basically as it does now, except not with one country dictating everything.
Yeah, I agree with you on everything up until the part about one world cooperative. I just can't, for the life of me, see that happen, unfortunately. It's interesting what you say about the oil gold ratio. I'm going to have to look into that more. I'm sure I might have stumbled across that chart at one point. But, my concern is it's human nature to go to war with each other. And I think we're entering a multipolar world, which is potentially even worse than the Cold War, because you might even have more than just East versus West at some point emerging. I just cannot foresee a situation where the US dollar collapses and everybody just gets along with each other. But I could be wrong. I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm trying to be my own devil's advocate. But what about the Middle East? We saved the war stuff for last because obviously, and it's a good segue. What is your current? I mean, you're obviously there at ground zero, essentially. What is your current understanding of things as they're going on there right now? What do you think is going to come of the Middle Eastern crisis? That's just one theater of war. We have several theaters of war potentially developing. But how do you think it would impact the price of oil? And why is the price of oil so low in spite of this potential risk? I mean, we've seen an unprecedented attack by the Iranians. I mean, obviously in response to the consulate bombing, but I mean, this is something like April is just a blur. Like when you really think about it, March, late March, nobody was really even talking about this. Then you almost had World War III start, where you had all these unprecedented things occur, and now it's all quiet again. So, what's your take on this?
I don't have a geopolitical mind like you, and I could be wrong, and I suspect that we disagree on this. But I can tell you that I am sort of on ground zero here. I live in northern Israel. A Hezbollah bomb on the night that Iran attacked Israel came about 100 meters away from my house, and I had to wake up my kids and bring them downstairs. I don't have like a bomb shelter or anything, but I figure. Being downstairs is safer than being upstairs, and I wasn't gonna like run in the middle of the street and look for someone with a bomb shelter. I have a key to one. Across the street, my neighbor offered me his key. Fine, whatever. Very
That's
nice of him.
cool.
Um, so my impression is that this was all theater, and I do think it's going to erupt at some point. But what we see now is back in what was it, 2019, maybe 2018, what year was it when they took
Soleimani?
out when Trump took out Qasem Soleimani, that the
That was
Iranian
right before the
general.
pandemic.
Right. So
Yeah.
20 late 2019, early 2020, something like that. Took out Qasem Soleimani, and I remember hearing from many different sources that Iran had contacted Trump and said, "Look, we have to respond to this, but we don't want to really cause you any trouble. So we're going to bomb this and this and this area. Tell your people to evacuate now, so that we cause as little casualties as possible, just so that we can let the pressure out." So I think that's basically what happened with Iran here. It was the most telegraphed attack ever. They gave us, many, many days of notice. They lobbed the missiles here very, very slowly, so we knew that there were like news reports at like 9:30 at night here that, oh, Iran just launched a bunch of missiles, so at around 4 in the morning they're going to hit. Well, okay,
Right.
we're just going to sit here, blah blah blah. It just seems like a play, like somebody's
Mhm.
orchestrating this. I don't even know for what reason. um, the thing is that I see that when the when the dollar does fall, right, and the U.S. can no longer fund Israel, then we're really going to be alone. And all the countries around us, all the governments around us, really do want all of us dead, right? It's not. I don't think I'm saying that something that controversial that all the Muslim countries do not want a Jewish presence here anywhere. And okay, fine, that's Islam. What am I going to do about it? I'm going to be here because this is my country. This is my homeland, and it's been that way for 3,000 years. Uh, so when we're alone and the U.S. is no longer supporting us, not because they can't, not because they don't want to, but because they can't, because there's no more funding, we're going to be attacked for real. And at that point, we're going to have to behave like we did in 1967 when we didn't get a dollar from anybody. We were totally on our own, and that really is the last war that Israel really won. Because why? Because we knew that if we didn't, we were all going to die. So we attacked. We bombed Egyptian airfields. We took out air forces all around us. We tripled the size of the country. We beat everyone. We could have rebuilt the temple right then and there on that day. We could have restarted the sacrificial process. We could have brought all of Judaism back in all of its glory. In 1967, we could have done it, right? We cannot win a war when we're supported by the US. We have to win it by ourselves. That sounds insane, but that's also historically, empirically accurate.
Hmm.
It sounds nuts. So I think as the dollar, just generally speaking, as the dollar collapses, the price of oil in dollar terms is going to go up and up and up. The price of oil in gold terms not going to go up that much, as it never really does, because gold is much more liquid than the dollar. Doesn't look that way, but it
So
is
I
that way.
guess what you're saying is if there was a war that broke out in the Middle East, the price of oil would go up in dollar terms, in nominal terms, but so would gold, and thus the ratio would remain the same.
Basically, it might go up a little bit, right? But not that significantly. You're not going to see like in time of war, let's say it goes up to like $300 a gallon, and then it crashes down in a deflationary crash to like whatever 30 or what happened in 2008, it was like 150 and then it crashed down to 30 in like a matter of weeks. You'll never see that anything like that in gold. You'll see that in dollars, and you will see that in dollars because during times of war, that is inflationary times, and you'll see a very, very volatile oil price in dollar terms. You'll never see that in gold terms. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, there's a couple theories as to why it played out like it did, as you're saying, with respect to the back channel communication that might have diffused the situation. And one of those things could be that the US is concerned about the price of oil skyrocketing and thus causing economic collapse. But then you have Netanyahu's interests, which may be at odds with the United States, in that he, of course, is trying to stay in control. So he needs a war in order to do that. I mean, I'm not there in your country, so I don't know, but I see a lot of protests happening. There's a lot of, I wouldn't call it infighting, but there's a lot of resistance towards the current government you have there, I presume. And is it in his interest then to start a war with Iran and to, in spite of the economic consequences of oil? Do you think Blinken is saying, hey, we need to wait, or maybe we need to wait till Trump gets in there because, or we need to wait till the election's done so we can see if we can win? Like, I know these are all big questions, and I know you're not like a geopolitical analyst. Your specialty is in finance, but as a person who's on the ground, do you think that Netanyahu is going to be there in a year?
Um, Look, Netanyahu is a survivor. He survives by basically doing nothing, by making everyone around him move and him personally not doing anything, which is, I think, why he did not. But I think why he knew that October 7th was happening. I don't know how long he knew, but I know people and I've heard them that the upper echelons of the government was getting phone calls. The Gaza envelope is under attack. People are being in their houses are being invaded and shot. People are being kidnapped right now. Please send helicopters, send anything. And it took them 7 hours. Like, what really, WTF?
Hmm.
What the hell is going on? So Netanyahu, um, when I ask people who know him personally, like what the hell is going on in his head, the man is an atheist, and when you have an atheist in charge of the Jewish people, it's never a good combination. It never works out in the Bible. It doesn't work out now. It's a terrible situation, and it's in Netanyahu's interest to basically play every side off of every other side, so that his political enemies are basically bouncing off each other, and he's just in the middle. Um, so that's how he survives. There really is no replacement for him. Everybody in this country knows that. There's nobody there's nobody better than him and him. There's nobody worse than him. They're all the same clowns because there's no there who really runs the country here, who really runs Israel is Blinken and whoever's behind Biden. They're telling us what to do. They supply us with all our weapons. So, like, what sovereignty do we even have, even if we wanted any? It's it, Netanyahu is he's an empty puppet that can't really do anything, can't do nothing either. So he just plays every side off of every other side, which is partly why I think October 7th happened, to give him a reason to be relevant. And he's just under attack from every direction. And he's gonna crash and burn at some point. I just don't know how.
Do you think he's willing, he's crazy enough though to take the country to a potential nuclear war with Iran over
No,
this?
I don't think he wants nuclear war. Again, if you put him uh, in the mentality he's in, like he's an atheist, he doesn't believe in a god. So then why would he want nuclear war? The type of person that would go on nuclear war would be someone who's suicidally theocratic, right? And that's not Bibi. He's a chess player. He knows that everyone
Unless
hates him,
unless they
and
think they can win.
how can you win a nuclear war? I don't think Netanyahu wants to take us into nuclear war. I don't think he's interested in that. I don't think Iran is either right now.
Well, I mean,
Um,
it all presumes, I mean, there's a couple assumptions. One of them would be that the Iranians already have nuclear weapons and that they could use them. Or the other would be that it would bring the Russians in somehow in opposition to, because as far as we know at this point in time, the only one who unofficially has nukes is Israel. So they would be in a position, but of course, the Iranians would threaten the Dimona plant and other asymmetrical style attacks. And they probably already do have nukes with North Korea, which is maybe why in addition to the economic implications of the oil price spike, why they didn't escalate it at this point in time. I'm talking both sides, why both sides had a vested interest in de-escalating. I agree with you that they generally don't want a nuclear war, but for me, like, if I was like a God-fearing person, I'm an agnostic person, not an atheist. Um, I would say that maybe an atheist would be more inclined because they're more like nihilistic in a sense towards rolling the dice on that than somebody who knew that there was a afterlife and believed in that. Like, maybe that's just a difference of opinion, but
mhm.
I'm it's when you have somebody who's cornered and they feel like they're going to go to jail possibly or worse, then anything is possible, unfortunately. So I
Yeah.
think if I was in Israel, I'd be prepared for all potential outcomes because make sure you keep that key to your friend's shelter. And I hope you got yourself a gun. Did you finally get a piece?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
I got one.
Right on. What about like prepping stuff? Are you like what else are you doing for preparedness?
Stocking water. I'm getting solar panels so I can disconnect from the electric company.
Nice.
Um, just extra food, non-perishables around me, and familiarizing myself with my backyard. I live in the Golan, so there's a whole bunch of rivers and hiding places and waterfalls and stuff I need to get to. I know where the water is. I know what the edible plants are all around me. I know what grows. Just I'm just trying to build up my knowledge without panicking or without necessarily doing it. So, oh my God, I have to go here if a bomb falls. I'm just trying to learn my surroundings. That's all, as any rational person would.
Absolutely. I think that situational awareness is important, especially as you're potentially on the at the crossroads between Lebanon and Israel. So, well, it's been great having you here today, and I would encourage people to go and check out the Endgame Investor blog. Always going to hear a unique insight from Rafi Farber in every episode, and also check out his YouTube channel and his Twitter account as well. Thanks for coming out, man, and good luck to you. And keep us posted on everything that goes on. I know I'm following you, so you usually send me some of the inside scoop once in a while on what's going on there. And yeah, take care.
Thanks, Nate, for having me. I really appreciate it, and I think it's a great example. I know we disagree on a lot of stuff, but we're both mature adults. We can handle it and speak like adults. That's all.
Yeah, in the spirit of the Austrian School of Economics, neither of us will try to micromanage the other's points of view. So take care, my friend.
You too.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, where you'll find high-quality survival gear at the best prices, no junk, and no gimmicks. Use discount code PREPPINGGEAR for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive, but the prepared thrive. Stay safe.